Amazon at this point is wide enough that both banks are visible as green walls at the edges of the water, the forest on both sides unbroken from the river's edge to the skyline in both directions, a green that contains more green than seems possible, layer upon layer of canopy and understory, and the vertical trunks of trees that began before living memory and will continue after it. The water is the color of strong tea. The tannins from the decomposing leaf litter upstream, turning it this specific warm brown that is also transparent in the shallows and apparently opaque in the deep channel. The boat is a small river vessel, perhaps 15 meters, with a covered deck and an open stern and a hammock area that most of the passengers seem to use for the better part of the day. It moves at a speed that is technically faster than the current, but that feels, against the scale of the river and the forest, almost stationary. This is appropriate. The Amazon is not a place that rewards hurrying. It is a place that rewards a specific quality of patient attention. Dusk comes to the river with a speed that always surprises people who have not experienced equatorial light before. No long twilight. The sun reaches the horizon, and the sky runs through its colors in 15 minutes, and then it is night. But in those 15 minutes, the river turns colors that have no names in most languages. The water going from brown to copper to gold, to something that is not quite pink and not quite orange. The forest, on both sides, taking the light differently at this angle. The upper canopy bright, and the lower levels already dark. The entire scene, a painting being revised every 30 seconds. Camille is a field botanist working on a 3-month survey of riverbank species in the western Amazon basin. The boat, her platform, and accommodation and transport for the duration. She has been on the river for 6 weeks and has developed the particular relationship with it that extended field work in an extraordinary environment tends to produce. Not the initial overwhelm of arrival, not the numbness that sometimes follows extended exposure, but the third state, the sustained specific attention that comes when the extraordinary has become familiar enough to observe without being dazzled. She documents everything, not just the species she was sent to find, but the patterns of things, the way certain plants cluster at certain river depths, the way the light at specific hours illuminates certain structures of the canopy that are invisible at other hours, the way the river itself changes character between morning and evening, between dry season and the beginning of the rains. She fills field notebooks at a rate that would seem excessive to anyone who has not spent time in a place that generates this much to notice. In the evenings, voyages. He boarded the boat 2 days upriver, a wildlife photographer on assignment for a magazine that sends him to places that most magazines consider too remote and too logistically difficult to be worth the cost. He carries more camera equipment than the boat easily accommodates, and he has been negotiating its storage in the equipment hold with the pragmatic ingenuity of someone accustomed to solving this problem in various versions across several continents. She noticed him first as a pair of eyes behind a large lens on the opposite bank during a survey. The boat anchored and she and the skiff taking samples. And then, as the photographer emerging from the forest with the specific look of someone who has been waiting a long time for something that did not come. The river connects all travelers on it eventually. He boarded the same boat 3 hours later at the Upstream community, where the captain stopped for fuel and supplies. He has the quality of sustained attention she recognizes from her own work, but directed at different things. Where she looks at the plants, he looks at the animals, and specifically at the animals in the moment, before they decide whether to flee. This requires a stillness and a patience that is similar in character to the patience her own work demands. She recognizes the skill in him the way you recognize a related skill in another person. The same underlying quality differently applied. They are both on the stern deck when the dusk comes on the second evening after his boarding. She has her notebook, and he has put the camera down on the bench beside him. The unusual and specific quality of a photographer who is watching without the camera as an intermediary. The river is copper in the pre-dusk light. The forest on both banks is very green against the copper sky. He sees the caiman before she does. A large, spectacled caiman on a log at the bank. Motionless. The log and the animal almost indistinguishable in the fading light. He points without speaking, and she follows the gesture and finds it. They watch it in the specific stillness of two people who have both learned not to move when watching. The caiman does not move. The river does. The boat passes the log in slow silence, and the caiman is gone behind them. The sky is changing now with its equatorial urgency, the gold deepening toward the colors that have no names. She has watched this from this deck for 6 weeks, and it is still doing something to her vision, still commanding a quality of attention that is total rather than partial. She is aware of him beside her watching, with the same quality of attention. Two people watching the same thing with equivalent attention. asks her what she is recording in the notebook, genuinely interested, and she explains the survey methodology and the specific patterns she has been finding and the questions she is trying to answer about the relationship between river depth and species distribution along the banks. He listens and then asks a question that is precisely the right question, the one that goes to the center of the problem. She looks at him. He does not know the botany, but he understands the logic of careful observation applied to complex systems. This is a transferable skill. The dusk is nearly complete. The sky in the west is the last thin orange line above the black tree line, and the river has gone from copper to dark, and the stars are beginning. Equatorial stars appearing all at once, rather than incrementally. The sky going from empty to full in the time between looking up and looking again. The boat engine is a steady low note beneath them. The river moves. They are the only people on the stern deck now. The other passengers having migrated toward the hammock deck and the small saloon where the cook has been preparing the evening meal. The smell of wood smoke and cooking comes from the galley. The forest is on both sides, invisible now but present in the sound of it, the continuous layered sound of a forest at night that has more components than you can separately identify. He turns toward her. She's already turned toward him in the specific way that happens when two people have been watching the same thing together for a long time, and the thing watched has given way to each other. The dark between them is warm, equatorial warm. The air is still holding the day's heat from the river surface. His hand finds her face, slow and certain, the specific certainty of someone who is not uncertain, and is not performing certainty but simply is it. The kiss is warm and dark, and carries the quality of the river in it, the slow, patient movement of something very large, in no hurry to arrive. She has her hands on his shoulders, and then her arms around him, and he is kissing her with the same quality of attention he brings to everything she has watched him attend to, completely present, nothing held back. The whole of him here, on the stern deck, on this dark river, surrounded by the forest's enormous noise. The stars are fully out now, the Milky Way visible even through the humid equatorial air, fainter here than at altitude, but present. The engine continues its low note. The river moves against the hull. Somewhere in the forest, an unknown bird makes a sound that she will try to find in the field guides tomorrow, and that she is fairly certain is not in any field guide, because the Amazon contains more species than any field guide has yet managed to include. The boat reaches her survey area at first light, books organized, her sample cases ready, the skiff prepared at the stern. The forest on both sides is the gray-green of early morning light on the Amazon. The mist sitting on the water. The sound of the waking forest beginning its day. He is on deck with the camera by the time she is the skiff in the water. He photographs the mist. He photographs the way the dawn light arrives at the river surface at this specific angle at this specific hour. He photographs her getting into the skiff, and then he does not photograph. He watches. She rows toward the banks with the easy efficiency of 6 weeks' practice, and the forest receives her. She works through the morning in the specific absorption of field survey, the plants requiring and receiving her total attention, the notes accumulating, the patterns continuing to be what they have been, and occasionally offering a small surprise. This is the pleasure of the work. The field is patient. It does not change what it is because you are paying attention. It simply is what it is, and rewards the attention you bring to it by giving itself up gradually to your understanding. In the late morning, she rows back to the boat, and he is there with 2 cups of coffee and the camera around his neck, and the look of someone who has had a good morning's work. They sit together on the stern deck with their coffee and watch the river. The survey area is beautiful, and she will be here for 2 more weeks before the boat moves upriver to the next sector. The Amazon moves past the hull in its own time, its vast brown water carrying the dissolved character of its entire basin, the forest on both banks continuous and enormously patient. She's a very small thing in this landscape. This is something the Amazon teaches efficiently and without cruelty. You are small. The forest is large. The river is patient. Pay attention to what is actually here, rather than to what you expected to find. This seems to her like reasonable advice for most situations.